Hello, everybody. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show for today, the 16th of July. Wow, can I say we've got some hot weather forecasting coming up for you today, talking about record-breaking heat, but also news on the Conservative Party leadership race. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest news from the past week. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello, mate.
Live on YouTube this evening for the Charlie Tolhurst Show. That is live on YouTube this evening for the Charlie Tolhurst Show. I'm your presenter, Charlie Tolhurst. Time for a roundup of the action with my opening monologue tonight. Now, what can you describe last night's Tory leadership debate on Channel 4 as? Well, I've got a few words for you. Feisty, at times a bit kind of unpredictable, and also in some places rather wallowy and soft. That was the message we got from the candidates the other night as Channel 4 hosted the debate with 5 candidates: Kenny Badenoch, Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak, Tom Tugendhat and Liz Truss, all being grilled on several different subjects and policies as part of the Conservative Party's manifesto planning. The audience clearly asking them questions from the likes of net zero to Boris Johnson. Much of that was dominated by Boris Johnson there as we speak. So yes, clearly lots of debate was actually put forward to the candidates, and we seem to have lost Zach at the moment. And Zach has rejoined now because I wanted to get Zach's take on the action.
Sorry. What were you talking about? We were talking about the Tory leadership race.
Yes. What did you make of the candidates performing?
Yeah, sorry about that. My connection dipped out. It's been quite a week, Charlie, I have to say. We had the first leadership debate last night, as well on television, Channel 4. We've got the first broadcast to host a debate, and it's going to be another one tomorrow night at 7 on ITV. What did I think about the debate last night? Well, it got a bit feisty, didn't it, Charlie? I think at times, most certainly at certain sectors. I mean, trans rights. I mean, Penny Mordaunt and Kenny Badenoch were at it with each other. We had Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak going a bit feisty on the economy. It was a very, very, very tasty session for Charlie for the whole debate, and it was at times very feisty. There was clear dividing lines. You seen like Rishi Sunak, where his economic approach is where he wants to get inflation down before he starts cutting taxes, and then there's the Liz Truss approach, Charlie, where she goes, and wants to cut taxes immediately. It's a very interesting dividing line between the two candidates, I think, Ryan as well. And then you got Penny Mordaunt in the middle, who doesn't seem to give too much away apart from the 10p halving VAT, which she claims is going to save £10 at the fuel pump every time you try to fill up, which I'm not sure it's going to make much difference still. But yeah, there's a lot of dividing lines this week, Charlie, certainly economic aspects. As I said as well, Charlie, I mean, trans rights were one that came up for the debate. Kenny Badenoch going a bit head-to-head with Penny Mordaunt on whether the word woman was included in the maternity leave bill, which came through, Charlie. That was a bit of a moment. I mean, it's not an issue I don't think it's going to define the country, but it may define the leadership because given where they are on cultural issues, Charlie. So yeah, they got a bit feisty there. I have to say, if you're going to ask me for a rating, Charlie, of where I thought who were the best and who were the worst, I think the ones that seemed to impress the most, I think as well, Charlie, were Sunak and Tom Tugendhat were certainly my top two in terms of being, if I was the viewer and watch this for the first time sort of thing, and then I think Tugendhat and Sunak were the two. Tugendhat was very open about calling Boris Johnson untrustworthy. And that's something. Now, he may have nothing to lose, Charlie, considering the fact that he's probably last at the moment in terms of nominations for Tory leadership, and may well get knocked out on Monday. But he was very open about some of his comments about Boris Johnson. He thinks he's going to get on the ballot next round. I don't know about that personally. He's going to struggle with voters, getting the Tory MPs on his side, is what I mean, and actually being able to persuade them to be able to get into the next round. So there's obviously a few faces still, Charlie. Still a few rounds of voting this week. We may well get to the final two by the time this week, Charlie. How many we've got left? 5 at the moment. By the time we get to the Sky News debate on Tuesday, we may only have 3 left, Charlie, which will be critical as well, trying to get people to vote. But yeah, I mean, the heat, there's definitely going to be a lot of heat outside, but all the heat, certainly at the moment, Charlie, is with this Tory leadership base. I mean, you got, looking at the audience, Charlie, not a lot of them were convinced too much about the candidates. I mean, there was like something like a maximum of 10 out of the 100 who, based on the night, Charlie, said that they could vote Conservative. This is by way of floating voters, not just Conservative or Labour voters. This is by way of floating voters, undecided ones, who said that out of the 100 in the audience, only 10 really could be persuaded to vote Conservative the next election, based on what they heard on the Channel 4 debate last night. It's not very encouraging, isn't it, Charlie? There's going to be a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt with the Conservative Party. And if you only got 10 out of the 100 floating voters that openly saying that they could vote Tory in the next election so far, based on the debate, they got a lot of work to do, Charlie, I have to say. But yeah, so my favourite two were Sunak and Tom Tugendhat. I would put Penny Mordaunt probably 3rd, Kemi Batchelor 4th, and I would certainly put Liz Truss 5th, Charlie, because I firstly have to say Liz Truss is the most underperforming candidate on the night. I mean, she is contingency Boris, which may be somewhat the Tory membership want on the right, but she was very uninspiring, Charlie, and she probably has gifted a few attack lines to Labour when it comes to elections and leaflets and all that sort, adverts, all that sort of thing, Charlie. So I put her 5th. Kemi Batchelor was interesting because she seemed to be answering most of the questions and engaging in policy, but I do not think her policies are realistic, so I put her 4th. Penny Mordaunt was underwhelming. People have been making her out to be this big thing, Charlie. But you could say the Rory Stewart of the of today's Tory party, but she was very underwhelming. I thought she was 3rd position for me, and I would put I would certainly put Sunak and Tugendhat in my top 2 of last night's debate, and I think certainly the public thought that way as well. I mean, Liz Truss was 6% on the opinion polls that came out last night, and I think looking at the opinion polls of Conservative members, they seem to be impressed by Kemi Batchelor quite a lot at the moment.
Yeah,
Charlie,
I have to say she was my favourite one the other night. The thing for me that made Kemi actually stand out was how she tackled several issues, including the tax cuts, which I have to say, when you look at Rishi Sunak saying he wouldn't rush the tax cuts, particularly reducing the likes of fuel duty, VAT, all that kind of stuff, for me, I have to say, Kemi really impressed. We didn't even think she was going to get very far in this, and to get to this stage, even if she doesn't get through to the final 2, this will be a great achievement for her. But I have to say, Zach, I think they'll probably hand it over to someone more experienced that will end up in the final 2, I reckon.
Yeah, I personally, when I watched the debate, Charlie, I think that I'm more aligned. I wouldn't believe it, but I'm saying this. I'm more aligned in terms of economics with the Sunak position, Charlie, of waiting for inflation to fall and then cut taxes. I think so far, Charlie, what we've seen from the contenders, apart from Sunak and Penny Mordaunt, is £1 billion worth of tax cuts right now that I think could add into inflationary pressures. I mean, Liz Truss was promising £31 billion of tax cuts quite quickly. And I just think, where are they finding all this money from, Charlie? It's almost like the magic money tree is just being able to finally come back and explode into life. I mean, how are you going to find 31 billion or even what Jared was proposing was 39 billion at one point before he pulled out and didn't get through. It's unrealistic, Charlie. I'm afraid to say it's totally unrealistic without trimming services and crucial sectors, Charlie, funding all that. I'm sorry, but you cannot afford 31 billion with inflation at 9.1% and then expect magistically to get all the money you need to cut taxes, Charlie. I'm afraid, Charlie, they're looking at the wrong areas at the moment. And I actually think that Sunak is a little bit more sensible here, where he's often a more realistic option of actually having to wait until inflation's down and then cutting taxes. I know he wants to cut taxes, but he doesn't want to do it quickly as the others. And I'm more aligned to that position, Charlie. I don't think it makes me socialist for saying that. I'm not a Rishi Sunak fan. I think it'd be quite stunning if they elect one criminal to another criminal in number 10, Charlie, because obviously Rishi Sunak did get fined, of course, for attending that birthday gathering with Boris Johnson. So it'd be quite something to elect one criminal and then to do another. But I certainly think that on the face of it, Charlie, Sunak was probably the most person that I was up there as the most realistic and most aligned, which surprised me to say that, Charlie, but he really did.
I have to say, he just looked well prepared. He looked very confident.
He did.
And I have to say, he looked the most out of the five, the most prime ministerial, if you ask me, because there was points where Penny Mordaunt had an. Can I just say, later on in my Great British Star Red Devil nomination coming there, but Penny Mordaunt had a pretty crazy week with her campaigning for being Prime Minister, when she was asked a question about how to identify a woman. Now, I have to say, she called herself a biological female. Now, I think to herself that she's had questions about apparently to do with trans people, that she's betrayed the trans community. There's been reports out about that. And she's kind of got flustered on that. I mean, Zach, what do you make to these comments that were made at these campaign rally?
I think, Charlie, she's got herself flustered into a hole on this one. Because originally, if you remember, Charlie, she was very open, and she was a minister in Theresa May's government. I don't know whether she was the Women's Equality Minister at the time, but she certainly was in a quite senior position and dealing with women's inequalities. She was very open to the idea of signing off on identification. So the idea that someone can identify what they really want and how they feel, really, to be fair, Charlie. Now, I'm not arguing over the substance, because there's legitimate debate to be had over that, Charlie. But it's the fact that she's claimed one position in, say, 2019, Charlie, several few years ago, and then moved more right on this and to say, oh no, we should ban people out of women's sports, men should be allowed out, but trans men should be out of women's sports. It's more of a trust thing, and telling the truth, Charlie. The fact that she's managed to evolve her position and sort of go from one area to the other, it makes her look untrustworthy and a little bit dodgy on certain issues, Charlie. So she's got herself stuck in a hole over this one. And she's sort of not considered the consequences of her new position. But, it's all over the internet, Charlie. Her old position's out there in the open. It almost looks like that she's betrayed the trans community because of what she said a few years ago and what she's saying now. She's flip-flopping over an issue, Charlie, that that is crucial to a certain sector. And, yeah, she's managed to make herself look a little bit of a flip-flopper, Charlie, and her performance, I have to say, was underwhelming on
I thought
Friday,
she was
Charlie.
absolutely. I thought her performance, Zach, was very, very below par. She didn't look very confident with herself on the podium. I just think she really lacked it.
She's got a chance to redeem herself, Charlie, on tomorrow night when ITV hosts a debate, and I imagine they're going to all go through with their campaign teams, seeing what they can improve on, what they can do, what they should do better. But it's a tighter 1 hour format tomorrow, so there's going to be a lot more interesting to see how this is going to be formatted, Charlie. But yeah, I have to say, there are going to be some people that need improvements tomorrow night for the ITV's debate to see whether they've to win over the membership, but also the public, Charlie, because some of them really need to step up if they want to get into the final two, which we should find out this week, by the way, Charlie. We're going to probably get votes on Monday, Tuesday, and potentially Wednesday or Thursday, and then we're going to be left with the final two by the end of this week, Charlie. It's going to be probably, I think, one of Sunak, and I think, personally, in my opinion, one of either Truss or Penny Mordaunt is my... It's gonna. I think Sunak's definitely going to make his way through.
Yeah.
But I'm stuck between Truss and Penny Mordaunt to see who's going to be the other one.
Yeah, well, let's see. With the support, will supporters turn and go to other candidates? That's what Tom Harwood was saying the other day on GB News, that we could see supporters going from one candidate to the other. We could see tables turn, because do remember, guys, with the voting system, these MPs who vote for these candidates, okay, they don't add the votes up. They are completely done again on zero ballot. The ballot is redone. They all vote again. So this could all change. And given the performances, some of these MPs could deflect to other candidates. Well, whilst we're here, guys, I'm going to play for you some highlights from yesterday's Conservative Party leadership debate on Channel 4, which goes from Boris Johnson's honesty and net zero, key moments from the first Tory leadership debate. Have a look at what I'm about to play for you. This is the Tory leadership debate highlights here on a YouTube clip. Thank you.
Is Boris Johnson honest? Sometimes. Is Boris Johnson honest?
These are all achievements that the Prime Minister led that I'm proud to have been a part of. Okay. But as I said, it got to a point where enough was enough, and I took the decision to resign. And that was the right thing to do, because I wanted to be honest with you about the challenges we face and be responsible about how to deal with them.
Tom Sickenhat, is Boris Johnson an honest man? Do you trust all the other candidates to be Prime Minister?
We're all responsible for our own campaigns, and I take it as a big fat compliment. No one wants to run against me. We have inflation because of our monetary policy, that we haven't been tough enough on the monetary supply. That's the way I would address that issue. Okay. But it is wrong.
Interest rates up, mortgages nightmare.
It is.
Liz, we have to be honest. We have to be honest. But borrowing your way out of inflation isn't a plan. It's a fairy tale.
I think it is wrong to put taxes up, because that is what we're talking about.
What we did is we had a long conversation about it, and you set out your position, and I asked why on earth this was going to be necessary, and you told me because the boss wanted it. Now, the reality is...
I didn't work with Penny, but my understanding was that the previous minister who had done the role had wanted self-ID. And that was something that I reversed with Liz.
That's not correct, and this will all be on record in government.
It is on record.
Let me just do a quick show of hands. You've heard them all. Is the government and all the candidates for government proposing to do enough to ease the cost of living, in particular your energy bills? Show of hands if you think they're doing enough. That's one person over there. Two. Okay, fine. Three, I think, in total. Lord Goldsmith says tonight, any leader seeking to change the net zero pledge in any way is committing political suicide. Right or wrong?
I think he's wrong. The pledge was made in 2018 for 2050. None of us are going to be here as politicians in 2050. It's very easy to set a target which you're not going to be responsible and accountable for when the time comes. I think the important thing is to make sure that we do this in a sustainable way.
Okay, that was the Conservative Party leadership debate highlights there, which was very, very interesting, I have to say, from that contest. So before we move on, Zach, listening back to that video there, what did you make to some of the policies some of the candidates were drawing up there?
Yeah, I like I said, Charlie, I think like some of it is fantasy. Like the idea that you can get 33 billion tax cuts and then without inflationary problems is just fantasy, unfortunately. I thought Sunak had the most realistic ones. He did get quite, you could probably tell, Charlie, he did get taxed several times. Tom Tugendhat put a little dig as well. You know, Liz Truss has had a blow. Then you saw the Penny Mordaunt and Kemi Bandelots around on self-ID trans rights as well. And then there was a bit as well, Charlie, which was also interesting. Well, Kemi Bachelor wants to abolish the 2050 pledge on net zero. And I have to say, Charlie, I'm not a fan of that personally, because if the idea that you're it's a good idea to scrap the net zero whilst the world is burning, especially when we've got 40-degree temperatures next week, is I think slightly worrying. I don't think people are being realistic that 2050 net zero is needed, personally, in my opinion, as well. And you might have seen the show of hands there, Charlie. Obviously, zero. I think barely anyone put their hands up when they said people whether the candidates are going to address the cost of living crisis, and barely anyone put them hands up, Charlie. So yeah, there's nobody's been convinced yet out of undecided voters, Charlie. And that's a big worry that the candidates are going to need to address going to tomorrow night's ITV debate.
Yeah, and I'll certainly be watching that. I'm not sure what time the ITV debate is. I think it's
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock tomorrow. I'll certainly be watching that tomorrow on ITV. The second Tory leadership debate, as I mentioned earlier, it's Kemi Badenoch, Liz Truss, Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak, and Tom Tugendhat that are the 5 remaining candidates they'll be taking part in that debate. Expect more punches and jabs and punches and spars in tomorrow night's debate, which I'm sure will be very, very interesting. Tomorrow evening, ITV. I don't know who's actually hosting the debate. I don't know who's going to be.
Julie Etchingham is the
Julie
one
Etchingham.
It's going to be the one moderating the debate tomorrow as well.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Julie Etchingham moderating the debate tomorrow for the Conservative Party leadership candidates there. Now, moving on now to I'm gonna go over to Russia's invasion of Ukraine next. We're going to talk more about the heat wave later on in Charlie's good news, or should I say general news, really. Let's do that. We're going to go over to the Russian invasion of Ukraine next, where Russia have continuously committed suicidal war crimes in Ukraine. This week, a missile strike killed an 8-year-old girl, I think in the city of Antalya or somewhere. I know that's in Turkey, but it's Antalya or someone like that. I don't know the name, pronounce the city, but it is in, I think, the Donbass region of Ukraine. 23 dead, more could be dead, we don't know, in the rubble. And Zach, Vladimir Putin is also apparently planning a trip to Iran to strengthen nuclear ties there and potentially asking them to supply drones to Russia.
Yeah, certainly, Charlie. You might have seen as well, Charlie. You may have seen as well. Belarus are starting to get involved in a little bit as well, because you may see all these false flag attacks that's going to start to potentially happen in Belarus, which is probably going to be dragged them into the war as well, Charlie. Yeah, Vinnyster was the place where this rocket attack happened, and 23 people died in this attack, Charlie. As well, it was a rocket attack on the city, the eastern front line of the city. 100 injured. It hit an office block and it damaged the residential buildings, Charlie. As well, I mean, it's another humiliatingly sorrow act of idiocy, and as like Zelensky called it, an open act of terrorism, which is not I totally agree with. The Russian defense military are denying it. They're denying it altogether as usual, which obviously it is a silly idea as well. We know, Charlie, because as we know that they are responsible for the stupid actions that they have done so far, Charlie. I mean, it's total. It's just typical of them what they've done as well. There's been 3 people killed as well, in 15 injured in another missile attack in Dnipro, Charlie, and that's the 4th largest city in Ukraine as well. So there's another attack there. So it looks like to me, Charlie, that Russia trying to go for offensives across the Donbass region, Charlie. As well, the UK have come out and said the Kremlin was fully responsible for the death of the British captive, Charlie. Now, we may have heard about this the other day as well, Charlie. Paul Uri, he's a British aid worker, was killed in the custody of a Russian proxy in Ukraine. Russia must bear the full responsibility of this, from Liz Truss. yeah, very sad news to hear about the death of a British aid worker, Charlie. I mean, another one of victims of Russia's repulsive actions. They've also been accused of escalating attacks on civilian targets, increased episodes of terrorising UK civil population, and they've also been talking about how Russian forces would have threatened UK soldiers with a death penalty if they refuse to cooperate, Charlie. I mean, that is just stunning. That is an act of, genocide in some ways, being blackmailed into the death penalty. It reminds me of when the Holocaust happened in World War II, where they literally would gas people if they didn't go.
Hitler's
You
horrifying
go along with it, you get killed.
Jewish regime, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take that comparison lightly, but it reminds me quite a lot of that, Charlie. And that's not something I'm very comfortable saying. The UK's military losses peaked in May. They've up to 100 soldiers been killed a day, as well. And the rocket, and then, some good news: Ukraine have managed to do some counterattacks. They managed to destroy more than 13 military logistics centers in recent weeks, and which means that they've allowed them to reduce Russia's potential to attack China.
Yeah, with the howitzers as well. I saw a video of them. I think on the Sun released a video of the howitzers in action on the front line. And I could see exactly that they were trying to use counteroffensive to try and target key Russian infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. That is important, Charlie, to make sure the Russians are not able to counter attack and be able to top up on logistics. It's very important that is dealt with, Charlie. So yeah, crucial moves there by the Ukrainians, but another act of idiocy from the Russians this week overall, Charlie, and continues to be so.
Yeah, we also have more news as well on that. M270 long-range multiple rocket launch systems have arrived in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Defense Minister announced on Friday they will be a good company for HIMARS on the battlefield. Referencing to that as well. Ukraine officials also confirmed the US House of Representatives approved $100 million in funding to support Ukrainian pilots to operate American aircraft as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. The pilots will be trained in the F-15 and F-16 jets, according to Andriy Yermak, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff, as well. So very interesting news there to see from Ukraine. Obviously in Kherson as well, there was also some deadly air raids there the other day. And that was a Russian-occupied city as they were trying to keep Ukrainians out of that area. Well, Vladimir Putin could well escalate that war. He also done a speech the other day where he said he only barely just begun his operation, so-called special military operation, aka war, that is already causing significant casualties by the minute. Well, it seems like pure fantasy coming from the Russian president that doesn't mean anything to this country. So, look, I'm not going to draw comparisons to that because I think Putin's war of aggression is horrendous. So, please, guys, if you're watching the show tonight, please absolutely condemn this war. If you're watching in Russia right now, anywhere around the world, especially in Russia tonight, if you're watching live on my show on YouTube this evening,
probably been censored. Please
make sure you do not support this war in Ukraine because it is an act of terrorism. Right. Moving on now to the last thing before the sports news, I'm going to talk about what happened in Sri Lanka this week. Now, huge protests over in Sri Lanka over a cost of living crisis that has taken over the country and actually forced their president to resign. Now, he's actually fled the country, believe it or not. Now, who is Sri Lanka's president, before you ask? Very, very rare name. I've not actually heard of the guy. Well, let's have a go of the name. Now, his name is Ranil Wickremesinghe, I think, who's actually the new president of Prime Minister of South Africa, of Sri Lanka, should I say. But it's Gotabaya Rajapaksa, if I can pronounce his name correctly, Gotabaya Rajapaksa or someone.
You get the idea.
Who actually fled the country. He was the one that resigned because his presidential suite was taken over by basically by the whole population. They decided to sunbathe it, decided to jump in the pool. the scenes were pretty stunning, if you ask me, pretty interesting. And Zach, I'll tell you what, the Sri Lankan population actually decided, I've had enough of this person, I'm going to chuck him out.
Yeah. Do you know what, Charlie? It reminds me of a friendly edition of January the 6th in America. It seems that with a bit more friendly less forceful way of overtopping a government. Sri Lanka, let me just give you an example why they're protesting it, because they've run out of food, they've run out of water, the inflation's at record high, their financial situation's appalling. And nobody can do anything basically. They can't get food, no one can get supplies, no one can get money out the bank. It's all a bit hard, everything's too expensive. The whole population has just done civil unrest, Charlie, and has decided that they've so fed up with the government, they've literally took over it themselves. Literally. I mean, the president's pool was just overrated with people having a nice little tippy bath in it. I mean, that's supposed to some friendly way to make your protest, Charlie. I mean, the actual house was invaded by protesters. It was quite a stunning sight, Charlie. And then the Prime Minister's house was set on fire as well, if you saw as well, literally being set on fire by protesters as well. They've managed to get his way into his mansion as well. It's forced the Prime Minister and the Sri Lankan president to resign. There's interims now in, Charlie, but yeah, it's quite a doomsday scene in Sri Lanka at the moment, Charlie, where the country's literally collapsing on its knees, trying to get supplies in, trying to get essentials in, trying to keep their economy alive. And I suppose this is what happens, Charlie, when you run out of money and when you run out of food and you can't even buy anything. This sort of thing happens, Charlie, and it's a stunning sight, I have to say. It's a total uprising by the citizens of Sri Lanka. Not something that I see very often, Charlie, but it's quite something to watch.
Yeah, you can just see everything there all unfolding, and he resigned via an email as well. It was huge. I mean, just a few days ago, we all thought, oh, something weird has happened in Sri Lanka, and it's finally come true that the president has actually decided to basically flee his own country. It's a bit like when, last year we had the Afghanistan crisis, where the leader of Afghanistan fled Kabul when the Taliban took over. Reminds me very much of that kind of. So, very, very horrifying events in Sri Lanka. I hope the country does have a cost of living crisis fixed, because right now they're going through hell with not enough food and water. It is horrendous. I want people to afford loads of money just to get themselves basic essential supplies. Is what you want. Moving on now to the sport briefing. We're going to start this evening with NASCAR now. Last week they raced at Atlanta Motor Speedway. The second meet in the season at Atlanta, I believe. Won, Zach, by Chase Elliott, who looks like now he's cementing his place in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolute, Charlie. Important victory for Chase Elliott last time out. A last lap that finished under caution due to an accident. Chase Elliott managed to get probably 2-3 car lengths in front, and managed to cement his position basically. Very importantly, as well, and he managed to finish ahead of Ross Chastain, who was just behind before the caution came out. Ahead of Austin Cena, ahead of Eric Jones, ahead of Ryan Blaney was also 5th. Daniel Suarez 6th, Justin Haley 7th, Eric Albert 8th, Cole Custer 9th, Harrison Burton 10th. There was obviously a few crashes as we saw, Charlie. We needed BJ McLeod, Austin Dillon, Noah Gregson, Chris Buescher, Alec Bowman, Ricky Stenhouse, William Byron, Ty Dillon, all got involved in crashes, as well as we saw towards the end, Charlie. There was a few quite big crashes as we saw there, Charlie. But so what that means for the standings, Charlie, because I think it's important that we view the standings as the chase gets closer as well, is that it is currently, if I get the standings loading up here, it's going to take, here we go. Chase Elliott is currently leading the point standings once again, as well. He's got 3 victories this year. He obviously, the last time out, he won at Atlanta, and he's now 50 points ahead of Ross Chastain in second position. Well, not it's third here, but never mind. But yes, he's ahead of Ross Chastain. Ryan Blaney's actually the one in second position. Actually, sorry, my beg my problem. But Ross Chastain's in third. The Ryan Blaney is currently the one that has the most points for the victory so far at the moment, China, because at the moment it's Elliott, Chastain, Logano, William Byron, Larson, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Cindric that currently have victories at the moment, Charlie. 11, I think, if I'm correct in saying 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 drivers currently at the moment, Charlie, have wins this season. There's 16 slots. And if it was going to be decided now and Blaney would get on ahead on points alone, Truex and I think as well Christopher Bell would also squeeze into the top 16 as well on points. But if there's more than 16 victors, Charlie, then it all comes down to who finishes in the top 16 in the points as well. Currently, at the moment, you'd think Austin Cindric will be wanting to keep up his good work at the moment, Charlie, because he's behind on the points as well, but he's got a victory as well, most importantly. This season so far. Now, this weekend, Charlie, they are racing in New Hampshire. Qualifying just finished, Charlie. Martin Truex Jr. is the one that's going to be starting on pole. Chase Elliott, the Atlanta one, is in second. Kurt Busch is third. Bubba Wallace is fourth. Christopher fifth. William Byron sixth. Eric Almirola is seventh. Carl Larson's eighth. Brad Keselowski ninth. And Kevin Harvick did not set a lap. He did get through, but did not set a lap because he crashed. At one point, I don't know whether he will have to go to the rear, unfortunately, for that one. The Xfinity Series race is currently still on going at the moment, Charlie, as well. Brandon Brown is the leader at the moment in the Xfinity race at the moment, ahead of Alfa Alfredo. Kyle Weatherman is in third position. Good race for him, actually, because he started 20th on the grid. Brandon Jones is fourth as well, and it's Alex LeBabe in fifth. Austin Hill sixth, Noah Gragson seventh, Sheldon Creed is eighth, and Bailey Curry's ninth as well, and AJ Allmendinger is 10th at the moment. That's 132 at the moment, Charlie, of 200 at the moment. Next week, I believe, after this race, they're going to go to
Pocono, yeah.
Pocono, sorry, my goodness.
Just the one
Pocono.
race this year, though.
Just a run race. Yes, it's just a run race rather than the double that they normally do. It's actually the second race of Pinocchio this year, but it's obviously they split the weekends the game as well. The NASCAR Xfinity Series is also going to be racing in Pinocchio, and so will the Camping World Truck Series. So all the three main series are going to be there as well next weekend, Charlie.
Yep. So that's all I can say on the NASCAR forefront, and of course Chase Elliott leading the standings there. Looks like he'll get into the playoffs. And of course, I watched the final lap of that race. Goodness me, a caution came out very quickly as well after that horrible accident on the last lap, which I have to say, watching the crash back, I think it was tied in or someone got right up involved, and it just caused a big accident indeed. I'm hoping everyone's okay if they're in the accident there. Moving on now to IndyCar. Now, this weekend we go to Toronto. Last week, Scott McLaughlin winning the other week, Scott McLaughlin won at the Mid-Ohio. Zach, I want to start on this podcast tonight by talking about Romain Grosjean now, because this week I wrote on Twitter about his driving style. I questioned him going back to his F1 days of being a bit too aggressive to other competitors in that, colliding with them, being a bit interesting on behind the wheel. Zach, what do you make to his driving style in IndyCar? Because this season he has had a few incidents. He had one at Barber with Graham Rahal on a straight. Then he had quite a couple out in Mid-Ohio with Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi and his Andretti teammate. Do you think Grosjean's got to change his driving style up if he's going to get anywhere in IndyCar at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a bit of bust up, hasn't he, with Alexander Rossi. Obviously, you remember last time that they had an incident on the lap 58 of the Ohio last time, and he ended up clashing with Alex Rossi, and he called his teammate an absolute idiot, if I remember rightly, Charlie, as well. It's quite something as well. So so they've, he's been getting into the feud recently, Charlie, as well. I mean, it's been quite the feud as well between a few drivers as well. So yeah, his driving style is becoming a bit under question again. I mean, Grosjean was a very aggressive driver, Charlie. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he was too aggressive in 2012 when he got a race ban for consistent incidents on the track. But he did improve a little bit towards then. But his aggressive style of racing has certainly come back in IndyCar, Charlie. He's getting the fists out a little bit. And unfortunately, sometimes he is paying the consequences for it, Charlie, like the Rossi incident last weekend as well. So yeah, there's a few things he needs to catch up on as well, Charlie, that he needs to really improve on and get under control. Otherwise, he's gonna lose out. I mean, he's been very good so far, but there's a bit of aggressiveness that's coming towards him, Charlie, that is costing him points and making him fall out with other drivers at the moment, Charlie, and he needs to improve on that.
Just looking at this article here, Romain Grosjean calls IndyCar teammate absolute idiot after threatening to punch him. I mean, Jesus, his Andretti team certainly got into conflict during a fiery post-race crash at Mid-Ohio. I mean, geez, I can't really say exactly what I think of that. He ended up finishing 21st in the end, did Romain Grosjean. I think clearly that you got to be careful. I mean, look at this. This was Alexander Rossi and Romain Grosjean. I don't even know what Grosjean was thinking of doing there. Trying to go, was he either going around the outside, going on the inside of Rossi? Just looked like he just ran him out of road. Clearly there, I don't know what to say. He called Alexander Rossi, and I quote this now, an idiot after the race. That was the quote there from Grosjean, idiot. So yeah, clearly Roman needed some luck as well. So very, very interesting discussion on that one for IndyCar. That race, by the way, is taking place, I think, this weekend. We are racing in Toronto, so we'll keep you updated on that race next week. Moving on to F1 now. We're going to talk quickly about the Austrian Grand Prix. Now, Charles Leclerc hadn't won a race since Australia, but he finally graced a top step of the podium last week, Zach. And it was a race that was, I think, full of plenty of attrition, especially in the midfield.
Oh, Charlie, it wasn't great racing, you have to say, Charlie. That was some brilliant racing midfield. I mean, it was actually, the action at the front may not have been interesting, but the midfield actually was very good, Charlie. And it just proves again that these cars are very fun to drive at the moment, Charlie. These cars have been designed for overtaking very well. It's been very good at the moment. And they've done their job, Charlie, in terms of overtaking and keeping battles alive, especially with the midfield pack, Charlie. Like Lando Norris, Joe Guan Yu, as well. And you saw several drivers in there. You saw some of the McLarens in there as well. You saw a few AlphaTauris in there. It was a great battle. And you even saw Mercedes in there as well, Charlie. It was great overall as well. But Charles Leclerc managed to hold off Max Verstappen. Well, actually not hold him off, but managed to get past him. He did have a few issues at the end, Charlie, with the throttling, Charlie, which is a very big concern. And of course, Carlos Sainz, unfortunately, Charlie, with that big blow up of the engine, it's literally set itself on fire. It did manage to get out car just in time. Carlos Sainz thankfully didn't set himself on fire. As well, another unfortunate Ferrari mechanical issue that really needs to be of concern to Ferrari, I think, Charlie. But yeah, Leclerc won the race. At the end of the day, Verstappen didn't hold off, and Lewis Hamilton, a good result for him as well in third position. I think Lewis Hamilton would be pleased about that, considering he crashed in Friday qualifying, but did make his progress a little bit through the field of the sprint as well. George Russell, fourth position, back to top 5 finishes for George, like his consistency.
He had a bit of a little skirmish with Sergio Perez on the first lap, but I have to say, in my view, it kind of, for me, the 5-second penalty was a bit harsh.
I mean, it's kind of, they're following precedents, Charlie, on that penalty. And if you're following precedents, then if you base on that, it's probably the right decision. I mean, it looked like Perez had the corner, although you never should risk an move on the outside like that, because it appears that you do get incidents like that as well. So yeah, that I think I agree with the 5-second penalty based on precedents. Was it racing it's otherwise? Maybe, but I agree with precedents. Esteban Ocon 5th, Mick Schumacher, great job in 6th position. I mean, he's certainly number one that's really improved over the last few weeks. Mick Schumacher has, Charlie. I mean, that he done incredible driving. I mean, the battle he had with Max Verstappen, the battle he had with Lewis Hamilton, in the sprint. I mean, obviously the one with the Verstappen was in Silverstone, the one Hamilton was in the sprint for the final point. Norris 7th, good drive from him, I would say. Magnussen 8th. Another good result. Ricciardo getting 2 points. That's a boost to his confidence. Ahead of against all these briefings that have been going out against Ricciardo and having to put a statement himself saying that he will drive McLaren next year. Alonso 10th and everyone else was outside the points. Bottas 11th, Albon 12th. Okay, Stroll 13th. Fortunate Joe Guan Yu, Pierre Gasly, Paul Racing 15th.
And a penalty.
Yeah,
for Gasly, who I have to say deserved it, because he hardly made an effort to turn into the corner at turn 4. Sebastian Vettel innocently getting hit, which I have to say Pierre Gasly did deserve a penalty in my view for not making any effort.
Yeah, there's Snow 16th, Vettel 17th as well, Charlie, and then we go down the order a little bit as well. Sergio Perez DNF'd following the damage he got on lap 1. Nicholas Latifi had mechanical issues as well. Carlos Sainz blew up towards the end, and it was only 18th for him, unfortunately, as well. Unlucky for Carlos Sainz, I'm afraid. A little bit of problems with the car, and he got screwed over, unfortunately, Charlie, in 18th position.
Yeah, we go Paul Ricard next week, so French Grand Prix is back at Paul Ricard. Keep you updated on that as well. You can also watch Formula E highlights as well. That will be done. We'll round that up next week, Formula E, due to being tight on time tonight, because we've still got plenty of action to get on with. And I'm going to start with doing Charlie's Good News now. Welcome everyone to Charlie's Good News this week. What do you think I'm going to be talking about this week? Well, is it good news to you? Well, let's talk. We're going to go for a separate feature in a minute. Short good news update on something very, very important. Now, meet Paul Zerdin, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Paul Zerdin is a ventriloquist who won America's Got Talent in 2015. This man is very, very iconic to the worlds of ventriloquism. He is a man full of puppets, Sam, Albert, Baby, and Urban Fox, if you ask me. He is a man that has a website. He is a huge, successful ventriloquist act. But in general, Paul Zerdin has become an inspiration. He's gone around performing at Butlins Resorts. He also has Edinburgh Festival tickets. So you can press here, checking out my tour dates, which gives you information on how to get involved with seeing Paul Zerdin, who is a brilliant ventriloquist in my view. I always watch him when I'm at home, when I'm bored. I always try and stick him on. He says on here, every now and then you stumble across a finished article, a show puts you on. So where is Paul? Grab the tickets on his hands-free tour. We've got some venues here. On the 26th of July, he goes to the Isle of Wight. That is in the Ventour Fringe. He's then in Edinburgh in middle of August. And then at the end of October, he goes to Horseshoe, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, Jack and the Beanstalk, London Palladium. In general, he'll also star in other things as well. Paul Zerdin is a true ventriloquist with very much a soft soul in the place of many people. He is a man, like many of us, who lived around the world basically controlling puppets, making dolls and controlling them in a very, very unique way. He is brilliant at what he does. And whilst I'm here, guys, I'm going to play for you a short clip of who Paul Zerdin is, because there might not be many people here who actually know who Paul Zerdin actually is, because he is actually very, very important to us. So This is a short clip of who Paul Zerdin is. Have a listen to this right now. This is Paul Zerdin, ventriloquist.
Hello. 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 Testing. 1, 2, 3. It's not working. Idiot. No, it's actually it's a ventriloquist. No, ventriloquist. Look, it's ven. Trill. O. Quist. Ventriloquist. Well, that's a microphone stand.
Oh, microphone stand. What's that?
What?
What's that?
Well, that's a microphone.
Oh. What for those are?
What?
What for those are?
No. What are those for?
I don't know.
Well, your rhyme's about Teletubbies, is it? Well, you got one here. Who's this?
You thought it's mine.
No, I just want to look.
You thought it's mine.
No, I just want to.
Is it me? No.
See somebody like, yes, just over there. Oh, gracious, I like her. Oh, hello. Oh.
He's a dirty old man.
No, he isn't. Look at her. She's packing through it. Oh, good God. Look at that. What? Look. I seem to have twisted my ankle. Shouldn't that hurt? Would you not talk when I'm talking?
Don't worry, you're not that good. Jerry, he ain't a ventriloquist. He ain't nothing but a big fat hoe.
Right, one more thing out of you and you are back in there.
Talk to the hand because the face ain't listening.
Thank you there to Paul Zerdin for some pretty brilliant comedy, brilliant old-fashioned ventriloquist comedy. Wow. I mean, Zach, what do you make to Paul Zerdin's ventriloquism?
Oh, I had to laugh at some points, Charlie. It's very cheeky, very funny, very entertaining. And I have to say, I did have a little laugh at some points because it just strikes the right audience for everybody, you know. It feels a bit adulty at times, and then it feels very kiddie-ish at times. It strikes the right audience, I think, Charlie. It's going to get the best of all the worlds, and it was a very good act overall.
Yeah, as well as that, he goes to Butlins as well. And usually we see him at Bognor, Minehead, Skegness, doing some various performances at Centre Stage or wherever it is. He's a great family act. I really love him. I really want to go and see him one day. So that's Paul Zerdin, ventriloquist. Also, as well, guys, Jamie Leahy was on Britain's Got Talent earlier this year. Came second place. He watched him. Paul Zerdin endorsed him, by the way. Jamie Leahy was an inspiration to a 13-year-old to be a magician. Now, before we move on to the papers now, actually, we'll go on to the papers whilst we're here because there is quite a few stories that we need to cover regarding one of them, or probably several of them, to do with weather. Let's go on to the papers whilst we're here and have a look at them. So the Sunday Telegraph goes for Sunak vows to ditch EU law holding Britain back. The ex-chancellor attempts to woo Brexiteer vote by promising to trigger Big Bang 2.0. Rishi says, I'll scrap the EU red tape in first 100 days. The Observer, as Europe burns, climate chief warns, I may quit if new PM dumps net zero. The Independent goes, Sunak talks tough on Brexit in appeal for votes as well. And the Daily Star goes, 41-degree temps plus string vest boom put us in the mood for romance, with a 41-degree picture of the sunshine, summer loving, a picture of what appears to be two people, one person in a bikini and the other person from, I don't know, one of the caveman times, if you ask me, on that one. So, yeah, Very interesting headline. Zach, what do you make to the latest headline so far?
Well, they're focusing on the Tory leadership debate, and this is a new one this evening, Charlie, because obviously this is pledging over the papers today, as well by the looks of it. It appears that Rishi Sunak is putting red meat to the Tory leadership and the Tory members. He's said that he's obviously looking for the Brexit vote, and he's promised to trigger Big Bang 2.0, which means to ditching lots of EU laws, which he thinks is holding Britain back, as well to get kickstart British businesses, and to trigger a load of an investment. Charlie, he wants to be scrapped or reform all of the EU law and red tape and bureaucracy that we're still on the statute book and show the economic growth. Charlie, this is obviously to get more Brexiteer MPs in the Conservative Party on board, as well, Charlie. So he's aiming going towards a little bit towards the right here, Charlie, in terms of what he wants to get out in terms of policy, Charlie, which is very, very, very important as well. Also on that front page, Charlie, I should point out there's also comments from Penny Mordaunt. There's also an interview with Liz Truss where she said she's going to put an end to what she calls Stanley's housing charges. She said she pledged to scrap inspired Stanley's housing targets. I have to say, Charlie, I do not think that will go down well with voters who want more affordable houses, Charlie. I have to say that's not going to go down well. And I'm not really a fan of that policy, what Liz Truss is proposing. But she wants to be more realistic on the housing target, Charlie. And there's also a comment in the Sunday Telegraph from Penny Mordaunt on why she took a Ukrainian refugee home to her house, Charlie. Why she took a Ukrainian refugee. Good on her, I have to say. I must admit, good on her as well. We have to be commended for that. So obviously she's trying to get the international openness and awareness, Charlie, as well. The Sunday Express goes for Rishi Sunak again. So that's two papers, Charlie, critically, that are going about Rishi Sunak. So Sunak's obviously trying to get the Sunday Express to support him. I'll scrap EU red tape in the first 100 days. The former Chancellor battling contested his position as front runner. He's promised to stage an overhaul of Brussels laws holding Britain back. That's basically the same as the Telegraph. So clearly getting the Brexit vote. And one of the key things, Charlie, that he did win endorsement was Ben Hutchinson, the Metro Mayor of Tees Valley, which is a very key northern town area, Charlie, that the Tories have won over in the last few years as well. That's I think a big endorsement. I think personally, Charlie, today from Ben Hutchinson, it just proves that he thinks that levelling up is still going to happen with Rishi Sunak in charge. As well. The Observer goes for the climate weather angle, Charlie. They've gone for, as Europe burns, climate chief warns, that's Alok Sharma, the COP26 president, is saying that he'll quit the government if any of the new contenders ditch the net zero target, Charlie. That is a big pledge by Alok Sharma. And I understand his position. He's probably one of the better ministers out of the whole lot, focusing on net zero and climate change, and probably takes that one a little bit more seriously as well, Charlie. And I'm very pleased he's come out of this as well. They also splash on Johnson skipping the Cobra meeting. Well, haven't we heard that before, Charlie? This Cobra meeting, by the way, today, Charlie, was about the upcoming heat wave that we're going to have on Monday and Tuesday. And that was chaired by Kit Malthouse today. So they're obviously putting contingency plans.
We're going to talk about that in a minute, actually, yeah.
Very bad weather. The Independent also goes for Rishi Sunak as well, Charlie. He's also making he wants to rip up EU rules on financial services, data, and clinical trials, Charlie. That's where he wants to rip up the EU rules, and he said that he would do that 100 days when he becomes prime minister. It's a total of 2,400 outstanding laws and regulations, Charlie. As well, that's a lot of laws that he's going to repeal, Charlie. As well. So he says the Prime Minister will go further and faster in using the freedom Brexit has, get us to cut the massive EU regulation Brexit, holding back our growth as well. So he's trying to get the Kemi, I have to say, the Kemi voters, the Liz Truss voters as well, Charlie, on that one as well. And the Daily Star comical headline of the week goes for 41 Celsius summer loving. The 41 degrees heat wave will be followed by a baby boom as boffins say couples romp more when it's hot. I will have. Why is it, Charlie? Every time we will talk about the Daily Star, there is some sort of sexual reference. Every newspaper we do every week, there's some sort of sexual reference in their title. This is to it, romps in the hot weather, romps at Wimbledon, romps at somewhere else. It comes as sting vests were revealed as sexiest summer gear. I will not be wearing one. Let me just clear that. I will not be wearing one of them. It's not my cup of tea, Charlie. 41 Celsius plus string vest boom puts us in the mood for romance. Well, yeah, it actually will be good for if you. I mean, there's a correlation, Charlie, between it being hot and being hot, literally, as well. So yeah, if you know, I think if you want sweat going down you whilst you're having fun, that's up to you. But you know, I'm sure people do like that. Let's go through some of the others as well that didn't make the front pages. It'll probably come out later tonight, Charlie. The Times sing that plea for honesty. The former Chancellor accused Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss of being dishonest about their tax plans in the Channel 4 debate last night. I mean, there was a lot of fist fighting there as well. We've done the Star, we've done the Express. The Guardian went for 1,000 my dies record heat high expected. We are going to break 40 degrees potentially on Tuesday, Charlie. I mean, that feels like we're in Portugal, not in blooming United Kingdom. I mean, we'll probably get warmer than Death Valley at this rate.
There's also with the heat as well. I just want to update the listeners. This is the Met Office here. There is
red warnings.
A red warning of heat and an amber warning for parts of Basildon. Now, this temperature here is from the Met Office. You've got here 35 degrees, 36 degrees. I'm just going to show you guys quickly the weather for Basildon via the BBC, just to check what we think is probably the more sort of accurate headline. So the Met Office say 35 degrees. This is what the BBC say for Monday and Tuesday when it eventually loads up. Here we go. They say 38.
Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, Charlie. Oh, that. I don't know, Charlie. That I think that gets too warm sometimes. That is a bloody warm.
And there's the weather warnings issued there to Britain. I'm just going to say an exceptional hot spell is expected Monday and Tuesday, leading to widespread impacts on people and infrastructure. Population-wide adverse health effects experienced not limited to those most vulnerable to extreme heat, leading to serious illness or danger to life. Government is advising 999 services should be used in emergency only. Seek advice from 111. Daily routines will be required. High failure of heat-sensitive systems and equipment, potentially leading to localized loss of power and other essential services such as water or mobile phones. Significantly more people visiting coastal areas, lakes and rivers, leading to an increase of water safety incidents. Delays on roads and road closures along with days and cancellations to rail and air travel with significant welfare issues for those experience moderate delays. So that is the red warning. Zach, what do you make to that warnings by the Met Office?
Oh, I feel sorry for the elderly, Charlie, who's going to probably be most affected out of this. I suggest they need to take cover, like having lots of fans in front of them as well. And I suggest to the general public as well, Charlie. I mean, go to the beach. I mean, if there's a breeze, go to the beach, fair enough. But you're going to get burnt on Monday and Tuesday. I've experienced 30 degrees in my life, Charlie. I don't think I've experienced 40 degrees in my life. I mean, it's serious as well, Charlie. There's a serious factor to this as well. It's going to be lovely and hot, but it's going to be really, 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 really hot. Too hot for my liking, personally.
Brave it out if people do not wear shorts. Trust me.
I'm gonna probably be my home, Charlie, with a couple of fans, a few windows open, and a fans in my face. Let me just tell you that. I may even have to one point pour a bucket of cold water over me, because I've never experienced conditions this hot before. So I'll have to sit with a fan somewhere in front of me, as well, potentially as well, and maybe a few waters on me. And one of the things that I always do is keep a shirt on, right? Okay, when I'm in the house. I know it sounds weird, but I don't like taking my top off in the house. I will still keep my top on in the house because I might want to video call my friends, Charlie. And I don't want to be going around showing myself off a little bit. It's a bit.
No.
I can't. I'm not a fan.
We're not going to mention one of our friends tonight, but
No, well, there's several of our friends actually, and there's two. You can name a few, Charlie, but
yeah, I'm not going to name their individuals.
Yeah,
tonight.
no. I mean, but yeah, I will keep myself dressed up, but I'll keep myself nice and refrigerated. Now, I must admit, as the night goes, Charlie, it feels hot as it is, Charlie. It's going to get sticky overnight as well, and it's going to feel weird as well. So yeah, it's going to feel.
It's just warm enough in here now.
Get through
it's
Monday
and
Tuesday
warmer.
at least. Get Monday through Monday Tuesday at least, Charlie, because it's going to get hot, very very hot.
Look at what's happening in say Portugal and Spain at the moment.
46, 47, Charlie. I mean, wow, that is quite something for a summer, isn't it? That is out of this roof, Charlie. 47 degrees is out that roof, and a bit rain as well, I have to say.
It is. You just look at the papers here as well. Also, back to the papers. Sorry. Daily Mail goes, we've elected Liz Truss for families £2,500 in tax cuts. Daily Mirror goes, temperatures of 41 degrees will force roads, schools to shut, roads to melt, and the NHS prepare for casualties. The Financial Times goes, that Boris Johnson will offer the public sector a 5% pay rise. That comes as more train strikes, Zach, are due to take place at the end of this month.
Yeah, more train strikes, Charlie. The R&T have announced new strikes on the 27th. BT workers are going to strike the 29th and the 1st of August. The actual drivers themselves, the train drivers are actually going on strike, I think, on the 30th or something, or July as well. So there's going to be a lot of strikes over the next couple of weeks ahead, Charlie. Will they accept a 5% pay rise, though, Charlie? Will be interesting in the public sector. That will be interesting. Is that enough to negotiate a few deals, Charlie, and prevent other strikes as well? One thing I'll look out for, Charlie, I mean, the Royal Mail workers are going to go on strike, the BT workers are going on strike, the train drivers are going on strike, the actual train staff at the rail stations are going on strike, Charlie. Lots of strikes over the weeks ahead, Charlie. And it may well be, I expect, we're going to get to the point where we may see the teachers go on strike soon if the 5% pay rise is not accepted. Then there's going to have to be some negotiation around there, Charlie. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of strikes in the next few weeks.
Oh, and then the final paper, the Iron Weekend goes for, as expect temperatures to hit 40 degrees. The Eye warns readers to take cover, stay in the shade. If you do go out, put sun cream on and stay safe. Moving on now to the Great British Star and Red Devil of the Week. Now, this is what a part of the show where me and Zach go over the nominations.
Yes.
For Great British Star and Red Devil of the Week. Well, we have obviously a couple of nominations for each of us. So I'm going to start my nominations off this week. One of the stars I'm going to give it to this week, controversial one, I have to say, I'm going to give it to Kemi Badenoch for the debate that she put on the other night. Absolutely shone through for me. The only candidate that apparently voted against vaccine passports last year at a COVID debate. So very interesting indeed. She's got a very bright vision tackling migration crisis, which comes as 14,000 migrants across the channel this year. I'll say over 13,000 roughly across the channel this year. She'll do something to tackle that. And also as well, other policies hitting out on Penny Mordaunt, I think as well, was a pretty big one. Also, Adam Brooks gets a nomination from GB News for shutting down a trans debate, suggesting women should not have penises. Live on the air. Can I say this, okay? Why do people think that women as men can give birth? This is why I left one of my radio station, Gateway 97.8, over this, because we shouldn't be teaching young people, like radio club members or young people over the age of 11, stuff about women, asking women who transition as men, should they have a penis? I mean, come on. Jesus, we're all thinking about whether to identify ourselves as men or women. Jeez, I'm not getting into that debate. So Adam Brooks, well done to him. Gets my nomination for the stars. Zach, what do you make to my nominations this week for the stars?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with them. Anyway, Charlie. Right. Let's get on with my nominations this week, Charlie. Right. The first nomination I'm going to give it to Charlie this week is this. This I'm going to give it to someone called James Withers. Is it? Oh no, actually, it's Harry Shinneman, Charlie, who managed to survive this avalanche in Kyrgyzstan, Charlie. This was an avalanche that formed on the Sunday, Charlie, where 10 Brits to 9 Brits actually were actually exploring, Charlie, this little mountain here. There was an avalanche going over, Charlie, and we have got some incredible footage you can see, Charlie, in the Chinshan Mountain, this avalanche that just set off and straight into the path of the public, Charlie, including one mountain, Harry Shinneman, as well. He recorded, showed snow starting to break down a mountain and sweep towards them, forcing them to take cover as the snow went on top of them. It was quite a scary few minutes, Charlie. But I'm giving him the start of the week because he got some incredible footage, Charlie, as well. It was quite something. This was some of the footage.
Oh my God, wow, that looks horrendous.
That he managed to survive that, Charlie, without any injuries. That undercover was quite something, Charlie. There was some that had a cut in their knee, but had to be airlifted to the hospital, but is recovering, thankfully, Charlie. I'm pleased to hear. But yeah, so that was quite a scary one as well, Charlie. I have to say that what the other one, the opposite, the total polar opposite, Charlie, the Red Devil this week, is going to go to Boris Johnson. I'll tell you why, Charlie. Because he skipped a Cobra meeting today on extreme weather, Charlie, and allocated it to Kit Mulhouse. And the reason why he did that was because he was having a leaving party, his own personal leaving party as Prime Minister at Chequers, Charlie. Imagine prioritising a leaving party over deadly heat, Charlie, another Cobra meeting. I mean, we've heard this all before, Charlie, where he skipped 6 Cobra meetings at the start of the COVID crisis. It just proves that he hasn't changed one bit there as well, Charlie. I'm going to give that as my Red Devil. And can I have an honorary mention if that's okay, Charlie? I'm going to do an honorary mention this week.
I think I know who this might be. Someone.
Actually, I'm going to give it to this one. I'm going to give it to this. I'm going to give you an introduction to Emmanuel the Emu, Charlie, who incredibly makes this animal is literally the star of TikTok at the moment. Have a watch of this. Let me just unmute it because this is watching. This is Emmanuel. Watch him gate crash a camera. Not once, but several times, Charlie. You can tell that's the owner there. It's a farm in Florida, and he becomes the star of the show. Look, he gates crashed the video. It's just incredible, Charlie. There's some animals out there in the world that just make you smile, and this one, who's become a bit of a famous on TikTok, is one of them. Absolutely incredible, entertaining. And it's just funny watching all the outtakes of this poor lady here who has to put up with Emmanuel the Iku as well. But it's just so funny and it's incredibly entertaining. Something that I discovered today, Charlie, and it was just hilarious to watch, Charlie. Someone gate crashing a TikTok for hilarious reasons. So Emmanuel the Emu is is the star mention this week. Especially goes to my special mention this week, Charlie.
Yeah, my Red Devils this week. Number 1 goes to the BBC for Inaya Flora for a horrible interview with Inaya Flora and Iman, referencing her to Kemi, calling her Kemi because she's from the BAME community, and the racist comments they've been making about England women's football team, saying the majority of them are white. I mean, then we go to we need some diversity, inclusion in society, and I think that needs to be addressed. And I thought, the way they treated Inida, they were stupid in my view. Whoever was replacing, I don't even want to name the presenter on that station.
Haley Barber.
Lady Barber. Just say him calling Inaya Flora on him on Kenny, a bit crazy in my view. Obviously, a Kemi Badenoch sport, by the way, which is a good thing. And another nomination, I'm going to give it to Kevin McCaskill and someone called Neil Harvey. This week in Parliament during PMQs on Wednesday, Lindsay Hoyle, who was a speaker, kicked 2 of these MPs out of Parliament this week. Quite a bizarre exit, should I say. Lindsay Hoyle actually had to raise his voice to kick both of these out of the chamber. The old party MP, furious speaker, Neil Harvey, Kevin McCaskill being killed. Mr. McCaskill said we need another Prime Minister before he was drowned out by other MPs. Mr. Johnson was seen gesturing Mr. McCaskill, trying to sit down Mr. Hannavy and Mr. Mansfield. McCaskill is the East Lothian MP and compared raising a point of order saying we need a referendum in the Prime Minister. Oh no. And then Boris Johnson also called the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer in that debate. Mr. and I quote this now, Mr. Crasharooney snooze fest as well got a mention in that debate. So Zach, what did you make to my nominations this week?
I mean, Kenny McCaskill, I forgot to mention Kenny McCaskill and Neil Harvey. It was a bit of a stunt, wasn't it, Charlie? I mean, it was one of those hilarious meltdowns in the Common that you see it now and then. It always seems to be the Scottish MPs that perform these stunts, Charlie. I mean, noticed Ian Black was performed a stunt before or getting kicked out. And now it's Neil Harvey and Kenny McCaskill that's also decided to, from the Albert Party, decided to do their own stunt of their own and literally put the chamber into eruption as well, Charlie. It was amazing. Even Lindsay Hoyle lose his voice, having to get a bit of order as well. Wow. But yeah, quite the week in the Commons as well, Charlie. And we're going to have quite a week ahead as well because there's going to be there's going to be a confidence vote on Monday in the government, and we've also got the final rounds of the Tory leadership voting as well. We're going to have 2 candidates by the end of the week. Who will be, Charlie? We'll be finding out this week as well.
Yeah, and please stay tuned. Debate tomorrow on ITV at 7:00. That will be Conservative leadership debate. Again, on ITV, candidates I mentioned earlier will be in the debate. But thank you for watching, guys, on YouTube this evening. This is the Charlie Tolhurst Show. I've been your presenter, Charlie Tolhurst. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week for more of the political news, including reaction to more Conservative Party leadership debates. Take care and goodbye.